I've read almost 600 psychology books in the last 4 years, and these are my all-time favorites in the world of trauma healing, consciousness studies, and high-level spiritual self-development. But let me put these down and stop you for a moment to clarify what I'm trying to do in this video. These books represent the top 2% of this entire library. They are 3,500 pages of pure gold. I'm trying to give you them for free, so please screenshot the video as you watch and order them and read them in your own time, because these men and women are absolute masters. Every single one of these books has been read twice. You're seeing on the screen my second reading process where I manually type up the notes, and these are the top 10 of 130 books I've read twice in this library. And it's my response to this question, which I get more or less every single week because people love top 5, top 10 shortcuts, so please let me give you the massive shortcut to your self-education journey with these 3 categories of books: trauma healing, consciousness studies, and high-level spiritual self-development. I'm going to go very quickly, like I did at the end of 2022 with my year in review book video, because it's not about me, it's not about this video. You will forget that you watched this video. Just buy the books and read the books. Let's start with trauma healing, because why not just start right at the deep end? First book, we've got Trauma and the Soul by Donald Cowshed, with a wonderful illustration from William Blake at the front of the book. This book is the kind of book that you need to read if you frequently find yourself being cut off at the neck. You feel like your head is located somewhere around here, you're dissociative, you've either got childhood trauma, you spend too much time on screens, and you feel like your soul has left your body. You've got weight, you've got grief, you've got agony, and you don't want to exist inside of this potentially wonderful experience called your body, because it's not yet wonderful enough for you to want to inhabit yourself. Donald Cowshed is a Jungian scholar, and this is one of the best books, literally I think it's the best book on dissociation that I've ever read. It's nuanced, it's sophisticated, and it's also quite practical when you unpack the myths and the stories and the case studies and heal yourself in real time. That's the first book. Second book ties in very nicely. We've got Alexander Lowen's The Voice of the Body. This is a bioenergetic study, which means looking at how energy gets trapped up or otherwise distorted as a result of trauma. This is all the holding patterns where maybe you'll see people who are always squinting like this, or they're always hunched over like this, or they're always inflated like this. Alexander Lowen is an absolute genius. I've got all of his books in the library. I've got 12 of his books, and this book had at least 40 pages of typed notes. I think I'll bring it up on the screen. This is how much I needed to recopy and rewrite manually just for how valuable this book is. It's going to give you a whole new way of relating to your physiology and your psychology and wedding them together to realize that your tight throat and your upset stomach and your clammy hands and your squinty eyes all have associations to trauma, or at the very least a certain wound or a certain defense mechanism, which can be consciously dissolved through consistent patient physical gesture and movement somatic therapeutic practice. An absolute goldmine, Alexander Lowen, the top book of the 12 books I've read, but I'd also recommend The Betrayal of the Body and The Spirituality of the Body as well to follow up. But for this video, we're going to go on to my number 3 book, The Primal Wound by John Furman and Ann Giller. And if you've been watching my videos for a few months, I've held this up a few times. I discovered it at the end of last year, kind of like autumn time, I think, last year. And it's quickly become a pedestal book. It looks at trauma, it looks at consciousness development, and it looks at addiction in particular in a way which is just masterful. Honestly, I'll say it's masterful. It's such a good read. I can't even do it justice. It's got these incredible diagrams. Maybe I'll bring one of those up. Here we go. This is in relation to the ego and the self. I think that should be coming up there. You've got these wonderful series of holonic concentric spheres, and you can see that even though this book is in the trauma healing category, it kind of blends into the consciousness studies category because the result of building an inner work library is that there's no clear boundaries between where one category begins and another one ends. This is truly a masterwork which you need to read. I mean, please just buy these books. Final book in the trauma healing stack, it hasn't got a cover on it because I personally hate the dust jackets. I think it looks a lot more aesthetic to just have hardcover books, but it's Internal Family Systems Therapy by Richard Schwartz. This is the second edition. I think there might be a better cover. There we go. Richard Schwartz, Internal Family Systems Therapy. This book is a goldmine of understanding about subpersonalities, parts, and basically how your consciousness fragments and how isolated trauma memories get frozen in the past or frozen into certain narrative structures or behavioral structures which are keeping you tied up in old stories and old ways of being which just do not need to continue. If you're familiar with the idea of the inner child, this book is the equivalent of going to college with that inner child high school understanding. It is a therapist book for therapists, but you're a smart individual, you're interested in high-level books. This is a high-level book. If you want a more easy entry point into parts work and IFS, go for No Bad Parts. That's the book title by Richard Schwartz, but you might as well just go straight to the top of the mountain. And I think this book took me about 10 hours to read the first time round, and it's got, I think it's number 3 in my second read archive. It took about 30 hours to reread and type the notes. I spent 40 hours with this book, and I use principles from this book every single week in client coaching. Highly recommended. That's the trauma healing stack. Let's move on to the consciousness studies stack. And again, these are the top 2% from my library, so please buy the books. Ken Wilber. How could a video be complete without Ken Wilber's integral theory? This is the best entry point, a brief history of everything. If you don't know anything about integral theory, then watch my other videos on integral theory or just Google it. But roughly speaking, it is a map of consciousness. Hopefully you can see that there. It's a map of consciousness which shows you the interior and exterior, the personal and collective elements of human psychology and how we evolve and grow through various stages of understanding, trauma, shadow, everything that it means to be a human. The rough example that Ken Wilber likes to talk about in regards to his theory of consciousness is something called the holonic or nested concept of consciousness, which is roughly the same as a book being broken down into chapters, being broken down into paragraphs, into sentences, into words, and into letters. Consciousness grows out in the same way that a book will always need the letter, and the letter has no meaning without the book. That's the nested idea. It's a series of circles, and Ken Wilber's books are incredible. I've got 10 of them over there, or 11 of them on the shelf. This is where you should begin, because this is written in Socratic dialogue, where Ken makes a point, and then the questioner makes a point, and it's just such a wonderful read. It was the first book that I read from Ken Wilber, and I recommend it be your first book as well. Let's move on to the next book in the consciousness studies stack. We've got a little-known Polish psychologist, Kazimierz Dabrowski, and his theory of positive disintegration. This book is an edited version by Sal Mendaglio, I think that's how you say it, Mendaglio. And the reason I'm bringing this book up is that this book is absolutely wonderful if you identify as a more than average intelligent individual with more empathic spiritual connectivity than average and quite a highly creative, energetic, at times maybe manic form of expression in the world. This book will help you to feel less insane. The idea of positive disintegration in a few sentences is this idea that we need tension to grow, and somebody who has higher capacities or an ability, let's say metaphorically, to run very fast or jump very high will feel the tension of being confined in environments which tell them to go slow or to just hop on one leg. They know that they're meant for more, and that perpetual feeling of existential anxiety that you might often feel could be because you have a level of giftedness. Dabrowski's theory primarily relates to gifted children, but it also relates to gifted adults. And a book like this will really help you to understand not only how gifted you might actually be, but it's very comforting to read. You can't get through a book like this and not reflect on your own history, your own childhood, your adolescence, the friendships that didn't work out, the relationships of people who just didn't get it, didn't get why you are the way you are, why you're so intense and focused and driven. This is the book to read. It's very, very unknown kind of read. I don't know if you would have ever heard of Kazimierz Zabrowski, if not for this moment right now, because he's unfortunately been forgotten in time, but it's time to remember him. Final book in the consciousness studies stack, and this is one of my top 10 because of what it means for me as a teacher and as an educator who uses this one-to-many platform called YouTube. I make one video, goes out to thousands of people, the same on Instagram. We've got The Living Classroom by Christopher Bach, and this looks at, as you can see, teaching and collective consciousness. Christopher Bach is a transpersonal psychologist. I've read all of his books. He's one of my favorite transpersonal psychologists, and these are his reflections after teaching for multiple decades at a high level at university and also doing courses and seminars, and what he notices in regards to the process of sharing an idea with a group of learners. This is such an out-of-the-box style book because as an educator, it helps me to understand how to clothe my ideas in certain forms of language or certain forms of metaphors and analogies, which very interestingly can sometimes pick up viewers I'm not consciously aware of. Sometimes I'll bring through an example and I'll say, so-and-so in so-and-so situation did this and that, and then this happened. And I made something up. I made something up on the spot. And I'll get a message that I basically completely described someone's particular situation halfway across the world. This taps into that subtle line between reality and imagination, or between the concrete and the etheric. You don't need to go all the way into the spiritual section, which is what we're going to do in the next stack. But a book like The Living Classroom, especially if you're a teacher, an educator, or someone who uses social media in a conscious way, this will help you to really get a message out there that will be received and take your teaching to a more spiritually conscious place without sacrificing the ability to make an impact. Highly recommended. Final stack. Let me actually have a little bit of water before we continue. Good sparkling water, because I don't drink, and I also don't like fizzy drinks, so sparkling water is good on the tongue and good for the hydration. Final 3 books of the stack. You're going to love these ones. Okay, let's go for the most confronting one first. Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. This book is about your spiritual shadow. We're going to be confronting your personal spiritual grandiosity. I've made 2 or 3 books on this 2 or 3 videos on this channel which highlight this book, and the reason I'm recommending it once more is that this is the book which helped me to get off my high horse about how spiritually special I am, because here I am having this vision, or here I am being so tapped into a collective ideal. This book deflated me right back down to earth and helped me to avoid that perilous pitfall where you ramble and ramble and ramble and get so wide open to God that you stop seeing the feet in front of you and you go all the way off the cliff. You need to read a book like this if you're serious about your spiritual journey, because if you genuinely come into contact with larger-than-life energies in one form or another, either within you or out there in the world, you start seeing things that most people don't see, you better bloody have a way to manage that or you will go insane. This book will help you in that journey. Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. He's the same author who wrote King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Fantastic Jungian thinker. 2 more books. We'll go with New Age Religion and Western Culture. Very fond place in my heart, this book. New Age Religion and Western Culture by Wouter Hanegraaff, published in 1998. This is over 500 pages of historical assessment of the New Age movement, looking back towards the esoteric Middle Ages, moving all the way through the Victorian period into the modern age, hippie, crazy marketplace that we have. Although the book was written in 1998, really nothing has changed. The reason I want you to read this book is that if you're interested in spiritual ideas and you use YouTube and Instagram to try and find new information, which, of course, I highly recommend as someone who makes YouTube videos, you need to know where the source material comes from. And the unfortunate reality of what you're seeing online is a distillation of a distillation of a distillation. Or to put it very crudely, you're seeing very diluted, messy, crappy representations of very powerful teachings that are actually losing the depth and the authenticity, which then lead to pretty weak results and outcomes. Read a book like this if you want to see past manifestation rituals and come here, go there kind of predictions and astrology and literally everything that you could possibly imagine that falls into New Age. This is the academically oriented book that you'll want to read to be able to see past the veil of the veil itself. You talk about Jungian ideas, we talk about theosophy, we talk about psychosynthesis and the different Hermetic movements in the Middle Ages. One of my favorite books in this library truly changed my understanding of the whole New Age movement and helped me to, again, with Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore, properly ground myself in reality and take the best of the spiritual world without getting swept up in the ego games of the spiritual marketplace. Because if you don't know that you're being taken for a sucker, then you're probably being taken for a sucker, and you don't need all of the information out there when you have the ability to tap into the intuition of your own heart, plus the rational discerning of a healthy mind and body, which leads me to the final book in this video, A Treatise on White Magic by Alice Bailey. This book is an absolute goldmine of 1940s wisdom. I have yet to find a high-level esoteric book with genuine magical principles, or you could just see them as imaginative, intuitive practices that help you to get your brain sharp and your vision clear, than A Treatise on White Magic by Alice Bailey. It's not as culty as it sounds. Theosophy has roots in Christian mysticism, but it's also got a heavy influence of psychoanalysis and generally that very interesting moment that was happening at the first half of the 20th century in regards to, I don't know if that means anything to you, a very interesting moment at the first half of the 20th century where psychology was kind of coming out from Freud and Jung and Alfred Adler, and then the second generations of humanistic theorists like Maslow and Carl Rogers, and that was all coming through in like the late 50s. This operates somewhere in the middle. It's one of the best books in this library because of how high level it actually is. If you're interested in really esoteric, really etheric phenomena of one form or another, and you're tired of very watered down information, you need to start reading Alice Bailey, because she is going to blow your socks off and send you right into the spirit realm, but also have you, actually tethered to something so you can pull yourself back and not go all the way off the spiritually grandiose deep end, because you know that you also use your mental faculties. There's a really interesting point in this book about not going too deep into meditation if your meditation is thoughtless. The idea of honoring this Western tradition of cognitive discernment and logical thinking while also looking towards intuitive strengthening and high-level spiritual development. Please buy this book, and please buy all 10 of the books in this video. I highly, 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 highly recommend going back and screenshotting at least 5 of these, and if you want to encourage someone else who may have seen a book that for some reason they forgot during the last 15 minutes, leave a comment down in the comment section about which 3, 4, or 5 books you're going to buy and maybe why you're going to buy them. And you can do a little pay it forwards gesture to help someone else get out of that apathetic YouTube watching state that many people are always in, myself included, when you're just consuming information and then it's gone and you just missed the opportunity to receive the very best of what's taken me 4 years of relentless research. Let's help each other out. Put a comment in the comment section. I look forward to seeing which books gain the most interest. I've already got a bit of an idea, but we'll see what you're interested in. At the very least, these are the top 10 books I've read twice, and they're all going to be included in the courses that I'm working on. But those courses are also structured around a 30 book curriculum and a 104 book curriculum. That's going to be my main Inner Work Academy course, which will be out next year. This is the top 10 of the top 104. Do with them as you please, and I hope this has been useful. I'll see you on the next video where we're going to talk about intuition. I may bring this book back out, but we're going to talk about how to develop your intuition at a very high level. I'll see you over there.